Okay, so step one, we want to talk about the setup. The setup of your keyboard, all right? How do we want to set up for recording a keyboard, set up for recording a MIDI keyboard, a MIDI instrument, all right? One of the mistakes we actually make, and I remember making this, one of the mistakes we make is we go, well, the keyboard sounds great, so I'm just going to plug in the keyboard, all right, and record the audio straight out of my keyboard. That would be a bit of a mistake, all right? And it may sound good, but oftentimes we find when we listen back and compare it to a real recording of a piano, there are certain nuances that just don't match up, all right? Even though the sampling is great, maybe you have like a Yamaha keyboard, you know, a Clavinova, they're great keyboards, but when you actually compare them to a real piano, there is just a difference in sound between a real piano recording and this sort of sampled piano. So a mistake that we make in the setup is just jacking in the keyboard and recording that. It may sound okay, but it won't sound professional. What we actually want to do, and it goes against what we might think we want to do, what we want to do is actually record the MIDI performance from the keyboard. All right, so a lot of people might think of MIDI and go, no, that can't be realistic because it's MIDI. Actually, I would say that you have a lot more control further down the line when recording the MIDI performance, all right? And, you know, all the way from you can change your piano to sound like a kazoo if you want, but it's going to give you more control to actually make things sound more realistic further down the line. So don't just jack it in. You can definitely set up to record that audio output if you'd like, all right? So a great way, actually, I've done this in the past, you can actually set up your keyboard with, you know, the audio jacks, all right, and record an audio out signal, but also, more importantly, record the MIDI signal. So you need one of those MIDI cables, all right, they've got an in and an out, all right, and it usually has a USB on the other end, all right, and you want to plug those into your keyboard. Pretty much all keyboards will have a MIDI connection, will have a MIDI out, or they'll have a USB out, or even, you know, maybe a Thunderbolt connection, or one of those fancy ones, all right? But you'll need to record your MIDI performance into the software, all right? And then with something like GarageBand or Logic, you can use, they have many different types of pianos, all right? I always tend to use the Steinway. That's usually like the default on Logic, just a nice Steinway grand piano. Sounds really nice, and you just record your MIDI performance. And if you've got a good keyboard, all right, most good keyboards will record the performance in its full capacity, all right? It will record the sustain pedal, it will record all three pedals if you're using all three, it will record the velocity, all right, i.e. how hard you are pushing the notes on the keys, or pushing the keys, the velocity of the notes. It will record everything in its full capacity, and then you'll end up with what looks like a sort of little weird drawing, right? Your MIDI performance, your mapped out MIDI performance on a virtual instrument within your DAW, within your software, all right? So that's what you actually want to end up with, and you can definitely record an audio signal alongside it as a backup if you want it, but I would definitely advise going ahead with the MIDI performance, all right? It's definitely going to give you better results further down the line. So moving on, let's say maybe you don't have a keyboard. Maybe you are looking to produce something and you actually just want to draw in the notes. Lots of people do this, all right? You're making a new pop track or a new house record or something, and you're just going in and drawing in chord shapes and that in a virtual piano instrument, all right? So you're just going, oh, chord here, and you just go in and click, and it will bring up a little note. It looks like a little bar kind of thing, and you can add another one, and make chords and make melodies. That way you can draw in your arrangement without ever having to learn to play the piano. All right, so a lot of people do that. A lot of people do that, and what you end up with there is your whole arrangement will be there, but a problem we come across is that all of those notes often will come out in the same velocity, all right, meaning how hard the note is pressed, all right? So if you just draw it in, you'll probably notice it usually comes up to maybe 100% velocity, all right? And you'll notice your whole arrangement will be like the same color. It'll all be green, all right? In Logic, it'll all be green, which means it's 100%, all right? So that's pushing it, not the hardest it can go, but pretty hard. And all of those notes will be exactly the same. Well, if you think about it, if you are a keyboard player, but even if you're not, if you were to play two notes at the same time, let's say you play these two notes and you go bling like this, right? Play these two notes. No matter how experienced you are, you're never going to press those two notes at exactly the same strength, all right? Exactly the same velocity, because you're a human being, all right? So one of them may be at 100% velocity, another one might be at 91% velocity, all right? So you're never actually going to press those two notes exactly at the same pressure. That is something that we need to focus on when you've drawn in your performance. You're going to come across this kind of issue where everything is exactly the same velocity, but a real piano player doesn't play everything at the same velocity. It plays things, or he or she plays things at varying velocities, all right? So in order to humanize your performance, you're going to have to go in there and change up the velocities just a bit. Some notes are going to be hit really hard, some very soft, some in between, all right? You're going to have to kind of try and humanize your MIDI performance, right, if you've drawn it in. If you haven't drawn it in, then you've probably played it, and the keyboard has transferred the MIDI information to pick up all of the different nuances in the way you played the performance, which is awesome. So you don't really have to do much there, all right? You've got a great, nicely nuanced, very original performance. It's just, instead of being recorded as an audio wave, it's recorded in information. It's recorded in computer information, all right? Which is actually better when you go further down the line. You're going to have more options as you go further down the line. All right, so that's kind of like a little bit of setup for the two options if you have a keyboard, or if you don't, if you're drawing it in. The next thing we want to do, and this is a huge one that I discovered all by myself, just by trying and trying and trying again. Grab your whole performance, grab the entire MIDI arrangement, select the entire thing, and just turn down the velocity by about 20 to 30%. Sounds too simple, doesn't it? But just grab your whole arrangement, all right? So you can just click and drag your entire arrangement, every single note. So if it's a 4-minute long piece, all right, every single note, you might have hundreds in there. Just select all of them and turn down the velocity by 20 to 30%. For some reason, virtual instruments just sound better, and I've tried a lot of different virtual pianos. They just sound better when you turn down the velocity just a bit. Things just sound so much more natural, all right? Sounds so much more like a real piano, because essentially the samples you're playing are real. The samples are from a real piano, all right? So it's not like you're playing a fake instrument, really. It's just, you know, you're giving the computer information that then plays back a very real sample of a very real piano in a certain way. All right, so once again, I'll just say, you want to select the entire arrangement, all right, every single note in your arrangement, even if it's 4 minutes long. Select the whole arrangement and just turn down the velocity by 20 to 30%, all right? And you're going to find things just suddenly sound a little bit softer and a little bit more human and a little bit more realistic, all right? So there's an awesome tip that I just purely discovered by doing piano arrangements, all right, through MIDI over and over and over again, and that little technique is just now something I do every single time. Select the whole thing, turn down that velocity by 20 to 30%, and it really gets things sounding more realistic. So the next thing I want to talk about a little, just briefly, is mixing, all right? So when you're mixing your virtual piano, there are a couple of things that we can do in the mixing phase to, again, kind of steer us towards a more realistic sound. The first thing that you will probably need to do, most virtual pianos lack a little bit in the very top end, all right? So in the very crispiness and the airiness, way up there, sort of 10K and above, 10,000 hertz and above, they usually lack quite a lot. It's almost like they have a big dust sheet over the top of the sample, all right, or over the top of the piano. And in order to remove that dust sheet, you'll probably find you need to boost quite a lot in the top end. All right, maybe something like 6 dB. It really depends on what virtual instrument you're using, but you'll probably want to boost quite a lot in that very top end, all right? So around 10K and above. It's just going to help bring some air and a bit of life into the sound of that piano, all right? So the next thing, this is the last thing I'm going to cover, is you might want to look at saturation plugins, all right? Saturation is something we use a lot in order to emulate the sound of analog gear, all right? So back in the day, they use big old mixing desks, they use tape machines, all these things that have a certain sound to them. They have that analog sort of nice crunchy sound to them. And we like to play around with adding that sound or emulating that sound using plugins. So you can look at things in your software like emulations of compressors, all right? So you use certain compressors. You can do tape saturation, all right, which is like an emulation of a tape machine, all right, which will sort of run your audio as if it's running through a tape machine. We even have just analog mixing emulations where you can run your audio through something that's going to help make it sound like it's run through an analog mixing desk. Saturation is something that you're going to want to look at just to help, again, steer you towards a more realistic sound to your piano, to your virtual piano, and to your keyboard sounds. All right. So I hope that's kind of helped. 5 different things there. First thing is setup. All right. So if you're playing yourself, we'll just summarize here. If you're playing your own keyboard, you don't want to take the signal straight out of the jack. All right, you don't want to record with a microphone. What you want to do is record the MIDI performance, record the MIDI information out of your keyboard. All right, if you are drawing, this is the second tip. All right, if you are drawing your performance in by hand, you're clicking and dragging and making chords that way, you want to actually look at the velocity of all of those notes and just kind of change them up a bit to make it a bit more human. Then the big tip here is select your whole performance and turn the velocity down by 20 to 30%. Then we have to talk about mixing, all right? Let's look at mixing for a second. You may want to add some nice air and clarity in the very top end, above 10,000 hertz. And the last thing, take a look at saturation plugins to get us a bit closer to that realistic sound, all right? To add some of what I like to call analog juice, all right? Love a bit of analog juice. Okay, so I hope that helped. If you have any questions, I'm going to stick around for a couple of minutes if you have any questions relating to audio recording and mixing. If you are looking to get into the world of recording and mixing and you don't know too much about it, you're wondering what kind of equipment do you need to start doing that stuff, or if you're just looking for some recommendations, I have a full recommendations guide, all right, like a gear guide that will talk you through my favorite microphones, my favorite headphones, my favorite speakers, software, all of that good stuff. And it's affordable recommendations just to help you out. See if if you want to try some new equipment, if you really have no equipment and want to know where to start, because there's so many different options, all right? Just go onto Amazon and type microphone, you're going to find a lot of different options. So this little guide will probably help you out quite a lot. You can get it for free, it's in the description of this video, so just click the little link there, it's a little Google link. Click that link and I'll send you over the ebook, so very much looking forward to helping you out with that. I hope this video has been helpful. I'll give it another minute here just in case you have any questions, and if you're watching this after the fact, this is a live video, but if you're watching this after the fact, throw in a question. No harm in it, throw in a question and I'll get a notification. I'll be able to help you out anyway, even though you weren't here live, all right? So let's give it another minute.